What happens when one of television's most beloved hosts comes face to face with Hollywood royalty who refuses to play by the rules? In just 37 seconds, a single comment would transform a lighthearted chat show appearance into the most explosive television moment of the year. Last night, viewers witnessed something unprecedented on the Norton show. What started as a typical Friday evening of celebrity banter quickly spiraled into chaos when Meghan Markle decided she had had enough of following anyone else's script. This is the exclusive inside story of how Britain's favorite talk show host was pushed to his absolute limit. The red chair was barely warm when trouble started brewing. Norton, known for his quick wit and ability to handle any guest, found himself dealing with someone who seemed determined to rewrite the entire show format. "So Meghan, tell us about your latest project." Graham began with his trademark smile, leaning forward in his chair with genuine interest. The studio audience settled in, expecting the usual charming celebrity chat they had come to love. But Meghan had other plans. "Actually, Graham, before we get into that, I think we need to address something more important," she interrupted, her voice cutting through the warm atmosphere like ice. "I noticed when I walked in tonight that my dressing room wasn't quite up to the standard I was promised." The audience shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't how these interviews usually went. Graham's eyebrows raised slightly, but his professional smile remained intact. "Oh, I'm terribly sorry about that. I'm sure we can sort that out afterward," he said diplomatically, trying to steer the conversation back on track. "But our viewers are really excited to hear about." "No, Graham, I don't think you understand," Meghan continued, completely ignoring his attempt to redirect. "When someone of my caliber agrees to appear on a show, certain expectations need to be met. The flowers in my room were completely wrong. I specifically requested white roses, and instead I got some generic arrangement that looked like it came from a petrol station." The studio fell silent. Even the camera operator seemed frozen. Norton had handled diva moments before, but this was different. The entitlement in her voice was palpable, and it was clear she had no intention of backing down. "Well, I do apologize for the flower mix-up," Graham said, his tone still friendly but with a slight edge creeping in. "Perhaps we could discuss this with our production team later and focus on—" "And another thing," Meghan interrupted again, holding up her hand as if stopping traffic. "The makeup artist you assigned to me clearly wasn't familiar with working on someone with my skin tone. I had to practically do my own makeup because she was so unprepared. Do you not properly brief your staff about your guests?" The audience was now visibly uncomfortable. This wasn't entertainment anymore. It was becoming painful to watch. Graham's famous composure was being tested like never before. "I'm sure our makeup team did their best," Graham replied, his smile becoming more strained. "They're actually quite experienced with guests from all backgrounds. But shall we talk about your upcoming Netflix series? I believe that's what people are really here to." "Graham, you're not listening to me," Meghan said, her voice rising slightly. "This isn't about moving on to promotional material. This is about basic respect and professionalism. When I agreed to come on your show, I expected a certain level of treatment. Instead, I'm being treated like some unknown actor who should just be grateful for the opportunity." The tension in the studio was now thick enough to cut with a knife. Norton, beloved by millions for his ability to make any guest feel comfortable while keeping the show entertaining, was dealing with something completely outside his usual wheelhouse. "Meghan, I can assure you that we treat all our guests with the utmost respect," Graham said, his professional mask starting to slip just slightly. "Every person who sits in that chair is important to us, regardless of their background or status." "Are they, though?" Meghan shot back. "Because from what I've experienced tonight, it seems like you have one standard for some guests and a completely different standard for others. I've been on plenty of talk shows, Graham, and I know when I'm not getting the treatment I deserve." Graham took a deep breath, clearly trying to regain control of the situation. The audience was silent, watching this train wreck unfold in real time. This was supposed to be a fun Friday night show, but instead, they were witnessing something that felt more like a public confrontation. "Look, I understand you might have some concerns," Graham said, trying one last time to salvage the interview. "But we have other guests waiting, and our audience has been looking forward to hearing about your work. Could we perhaps address your concerns privately after the show?" Meghan's expression hardened. "So now you want to silence me, push my legitimate complaints backstage where no one can hear them? That's exactly the kind of behavior I'm talking about, Graham." The audience gasped audibly. Several people in the front row exchanged shocked glances. This was unlike anything they had ever witnessed on the usually cheerful show. "I'm not trying to silence anyone," Graham replied, his patience clearly wearing thin. "I'm trying to give our viewers the show they came to see. We have a format here, Meghan, and it works because everyone respects it." "Format?" Meghan laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Your format seems to involve treating your guests poorly and then expecting them to smile and pretend everything is fine." "Well, I'm not going to pretend, Graham. I'm going to speak my truth." Graham's jaw tightened. 20 years of hosting experience had taught him how to handle difficult situations, but this was pushing even his legendary patience to the breaking point. "Your truth?" he repeated, his voice carrying a warning that anyone who knew him would recognize. "Meghan, you've been here for less than an hour. You've complained about flowers, makeup, and now our entire show format. Meanwhile, you haven't said a single word about why you're actually here." "Maybe that's because I'm questioning whether I should even be here," Meghan shot back. "When someone treats me with such obvious disregard, it makes me wonder what other corners are being cut. How do I know this interview will even be edited fairly? How do I know you won't twist my words to fit whatever narrative you want?" The studio was dead silent now. Even the usually bustling backstage crew had stopped what they were doing to listen. Graham Norton, the man who had made a career out of making celebrities feel at ease, was facing his biggest challenge yet. "In 20 years of doing this show," Graham said slowly, his voice dangerously calm, "I have never, not once, edited an interview unfairly or twisted anyone's words. My reputation speaks for itself." "Does it, though?" Meghan pressed on, seemingly oblivious to the growing anger in Graham's voice. "Because right now, your reputation with me is pretty poor. And I have a platform, Graham. I have millions of followers who trust what I say. They'll want to know how I was treated here tonight." That was the moment everything changed. The threat was clear, and everyone in the studio felt it. Graham Norton sat back in his chair, and for the first time since the interview began, he was completely silent. The audience held their breath. "Are you threatening me?" Graham asked quietly, his famous warmth completely gone now. "Are you actually sitting in my studio, on my show, threatening to damage my reputation because you didn't like the flowers in your dressing room?" "I'm not threatening anyone," Meghan replied, though her tone suggested otherwise. "I'm simply stating facts. My followers deserve to know when someone in the media treats me poorly. Transparency is important, don't you think?" Graham stared at her for a long moment. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every second of this unprecedented confrontation. The audience was so quiet, you could hear people breathing. "Transparency," Graham repeated slowly. "You want to talk about transparency? Let's be completely transparent then. You arrived 2 hours late tonight. 2 hours. Do you know how many people had to wait because of that? Crew members, other guests, audience members who had traveled from all over the country." Meghan's confident expression flickered for just a moment. "I had important calls to take care of." "Important calls," Graham interrupted, and now there was steel in his voice. "More important than the commitment you made to be here? More important than respecting other people's time?" "You don't understand the pressures I'm under," Meghan began, but Graham wasn't finished. "And when you finally did arrive, you demanded we rearrange the entire seating chart because you didn't want to sit next to one of our other guests. A guest who, by the way, is a respected actor with 30 years of experience." The audience was transfixed. They were witnessing Graham Norton, usually the most diplomatic of hosts, finally push back against behavior that had clearly crossed every line. "That actor has never done anything but support other people in this industry," Graham continued, his voice growing stronger with each word. "But you didn't want to sit next to him because, and I quote, he wasn't relevant enough to share your spotlight." Meghan's face flushed. "I never said that exactly. Those were your exact words to my producer." Graham cut her off. "Relevant enough. As if this show, this stage, belongs to you, and you get to decide who deserves to be here." The audience was completely riveted. They had never seen Graham like this. His usual playful demeanor was gone, replaced by something much more serious and powerful. "Graham, you're twisting things," Meghan said, but her voice had lost some of its earlier confidence. "I simply wanted to make sure the show would be structured in a way that made sense." "Made sense to who?" Graham demanded. "To you? Because it certainly didn't make sense to anyone else. Do you know what my other guest said when we told him about the seating change? He said, and I quote, 'Whatever makes everyone comfortable.' That's class, Meghan. That's how professionals behave." Meghan's composure was starting to crack. "I don't have to sit here and listen to this lecture." "Actually, you do," Graham said firmly. Because you're in my studio, on my show, and you've spent the last 20 minutes insulting my staff, my format, and now you're threatening my reputation. So yes, you absolutely do have to sit here and listen." The silence that followed was deafening. The audience couldn't believe what they were witnessing. Graham Norton, beloved for his kindness and humor, was showing a side of himself that none of them had ever seen before. "I think," Meghan said slowly, clearly trying to regain control, "that this interview isn't going the way either of us expected. Perhaps we should take a break." "No," Graham said simply, "no breaks. You wanted transparency, remember? You wanted to speak your truth. Well, let me speak mine." He leaned forward in his chair, his eyes never leaving hers. "In 20 years of hosting this show, I have welcomed hundreds of guests. Actors, musicians, politicians, royalty, ordinary people with extraordinary stories. Some were nervous, some were shy, some were having the worst day of their lives. But every single one of them showed up with respect for the show, for the audience, for the people who work here." Meghan opened her mouth to speak, but Graham held up his hand. Every single one of them understood that being invited here is a privilege, not a right. They understood that this isn't about them, it's about entertainment. It's about giving people a break from their daily lives. It's about celebration and joy. His voice was building now, filled with passion and frustration that had clearly been building throughout the interview. "But you walked in here tonight like you own the place, like we should all be grateful that you graced us with your presence. Like everyone else, the crew who have been here since 6 this morning, the audience who traveled hours to be here, the other guests who rearranged their schedules, like none of us matter." The audience was completely silent, hanging on every word. This wasn't just about a difficult guest anymore. This was about respect, professionalism, and basic human decency. "Graham, I think you're overreacting." Meghan tried one last time, but her voice was weak now. "Am I?" Graham asked. "Am I overreacting? Because from where I'm sitting, I've been remarkably patient. I've listened to you complain about flowers, makeup, seating arrangements, and staff members who have done nothing but try to make you comfortable. I've watched you dismiss this show, this audience, and, frankly, me, as beneath you." He stood up from his chair, something that had never happened in the middle of an interview before. "And now, after all of that, after showing complete disrespect for everyone here, you have the audacity to threaten my reputation? To suggest that you'll tell your followers how poorly you were treated?" The studio was electric with tension. Everyone could sense that something unprecedented was about to happen. "Well, let me save you the trouble," Graham said, his voice carrying clearly throughout the silent studio. "Let me give you something real to tell them. Meghan Markle, this interview is over. Security will escort you out. Thank you for coming, but you're no longer welcome on this show." The audience erupted. Some gasped, others applauded. Many simply sat in stunned silence. Meghan's face went through a series of expressions: shock, anger, disbelief. "You cannot be serious," she said, standing up as well. "You're actually kicking me off your show?" "I absolutely am," Graham replied without hesitation. "This is my show, this is my studio, and I will not allow anyone to treat my staff, my audience, or frankly myself with such blatant disrespect." And with that, Graham Norton did something that will go down in television history. He walked off his own stage, leaving Meghan Markle standing alone as security quietly approached her chair.